Lauren comes to us from Hem Support Wear, and I'm so excited to chat with her about her story and him and how she sees the industry going. But I guess just to start off, I'd love to learn more about like that aha moment that made you realize that there was a gap in the women's undergarment support market that you needed to fill.
Yeah, so I came into this space with background. My background's in a different space, so I came into it through personal experience. I had my first baby, and after that, in those early weeks postpartum, I was diagnosed with pelvic organ prolapse. And when I was working with my pelvic floor PT, she recommended that I wear an external support garment to help mitigate my symptoms while I was giving my body time to recover and, working with her, that whole thing. And I ordered the garment she had recommended and, got it home, put it on, and thankfully it did help mitigate my symptoms, which was great. But I didn't like to wear it for various reasons. It was like a jockstrap type design. It had thick elastic that dug into my sides. It showed through my clothing. It had Velcro that tore up my clothes. Like just every single time I would put it on, I just was in this like mental battle of like, it helps my symptoms feel better, but I hate wearing this thing. And when I would go back to my appointments, I'd be like, is this the only option? And she's like, well, there are some others. This is one of the more recommended ones. Anyways, and so I then started to be like, okay, well, what other options are there? Did a lot of research. I've tried almost every other option at this point. I have almost all of them. But what I realized was that for various reasons, while they would provide the needed support, they were just all uncomfortable to wear, whether it was limited size ranges, showed through your clothing, just didn't fit. And once I learned how many people were really impacted by pelvic floor disorders and more specifically pelvic organ prolapse, it was just this light bulb moment for me of why isn't there something better in this space? Like why am I struggling so hard to find something that makes me feel like myself again? And it was going through that experience that I couldn't stop thinking about it, and then just started to put one foot in front of the other and figured let's see what I can do about it.
That's awesome. And thank you so much for sharing that. I completely understand the sentiment of like, it worked, but I don't love,
Yeah,
using it or wearing it. So I'm
yeah.
so excited that you're able to make that type of garment a lot more comfortable and fit most women out there. So um I guess like in that same vein, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when, first trying to explain your vision to investors or manufacturers or even early customers?
Yeah, it really started with like the people who were helping me even design it, like trying to articulate like what is it that it needs to do, what are the drawbacks from the others. Um, that was like a big like uphill battle because it's hard, especially like when you're new to the industry. It's harder to find like the technical designers and people who can really help you achieve that vision with a garment that not only needs to like look nice, but it has a purpose and a job to do. And it's something I'm still working to improve. I'm so happy and like proud of what we have today, but I'm already working on the 2.0 version and want to find like an even more like knowledgeable expert in that functional garment design. But kind of back to your original question, like beyond that, it's interesting when you're talking with other people about this product, the brand, this space, because there's such a learning curve. Like I would go to a pitch competition and you come into it and I'd be like on a stage and I have this like slide behind me with like all of these women in these external support garments. And it's just not your traditional pitch item, that's at all these competitions. And then the interesting thing is it's like everyone has a pelvic floor. Like this isn't just a women's issue. Men can get prolapse. My garment is solving a specific thing that happens with women in this context, but pelvic health is not a male or female issue. It impacts everyone. But there's such an education gap there as far a lot. It's just because so many people don't know about it until something goes wrong. And so if something goes wrong, then you're one of the people who are in the know. But that's the other part of what I'm really working to address as well, is this is so much more than just a garment. It's just I don't want people to go through that blindsiding experience that I went to. I want them to be empowered with understanding what's going on with my body. What are my options? How can I talk to my healthcare providers about this? Like, I didn't even have the words to describe my symptoms. in those first, meetings, because you don't know to say bulging, heaviness, dragging, like that's that stuff that comes to mind. So that also translates to all these other conversations, because even in some recent ones, you'll talk to like a male who's a potential investor, and it's like, well, let me talk to my wife about this. Or even talking to women investors, that if they aren't directly impacted, it's like, well, let me see if my girlfriends have this, because I don't really know if this is a big deal. And so there's that hurdle
Hmm.
that you overcome in a lot of these different arenas.
Yeah, that's tough, especially, just trying to overcome that educational gap.
Yes.
So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
I often joke with to call like with friends. I'm like, I wish I would have gotten into like a cool product that I could just have sample sizes of and just like give to everybody, because it feels like that would be easier than trying to like overcome like all of this stuff. But no, I'm excited to do it, but it is a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have like a memorable story about a piece of feedback from a customer that really validated what you were building?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask, because I recently, it's been very interesting, like hearing from customers, because we really kind of have two distinct groups of women who find the product helpful. There's your people who are early postpartum and experiencing this for the first time in their younger years. And then the other big group of women who experience this is as you go through menopause and age and things change, that's when you have another big prevalence of people experiencing prolapse, either for the first time or it potentially worsening as they've aged. And recently, I got this unsolicited story from a customer that literally brought me to tears, because she was 79 and she had been planning and working so hard with her pelvic floor physical therapist, and then pairing that with our garments, and was able to go on a trip to Africa where she had never been before. And at 79, went on this huge trip and was able to feel confident and comfortable the whole time because of all the work she had put in, and then having that supported by our garments. And I like to have stories like that, because when it feels hard, you can go back to that and be like, okay, this is really making a difference for people and what they're able to do and what they're able to do confidently and comfortably. And that's really like what it's all about.
That's amazing. And that just is like a testament to how like life-changing that is.
Yeah,
Like,
truly.
yeah, that's amazing. Oh, I love to hear that. Um, so I guess this makes me think like, how do you balance, between support and comfort and style in your designs? And, are there any compromises that you're definitely not like open to making when it comes to the product?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, that's one where I feel like what we have now is great. I would love to be able to get, I'm actively looking for the right partners for this improved version, because I feel like it was very hard to balance the comfort and having something that just makes you feel like yourself, but also providing the support. And you're like tweaking all these things, and it's a very it's a challenging process, because every single variable you change, you have to make a new prototype and really test it and be very thorough. So you change the fabric, you have to do another one. And that's interesting as you work your way through, because you also then have to say, okay, this part's good enough. Like, let's move on to this next piece and get it to where, like right now, it is a supportive garment that fits most people well. We still have some room for improvement, but we were able to even do cool things where when we were doing our user testing, as we were finalizing prototypes, we got feedback that for some people, and what we found was people with a certain body shape, it wasn't fitting as well. So we
Mhm.
kind of went out of the norm, and we have a curvy and a straight fit of the garment, because we were just realizing like we want this to be as comfortable as possible for as many people as possible. And by us tweaking that fit, because I mean, as you know, some women are more like their proportions are more proportional, straight up and down, or even like more inverted. Whereas for others, their waists are like much smaller than their hips. And so garments will fit very differently depending on, where you fall in that. And we wanted to, again, provide that support to as many body shapes as possible. And so that's why we landed on the two styles. And then I will be excited for, future versions as we can work with better technology and stuff like that. And I think to your question of like the compromising and things like that, the stuff that's so important to me is like where the fabric choices, where they're coming from, what it's certified as, and that's an area we're looking to always do better. And it being comfortable and actually doing what it's supposed to do. And I just you want to, my test was, can I wear this and just not have it be constantly top of mind symptoms or the garment that I'm wearing? Like, I want you to be able to put it on like underwear and not think about it again from a fit perspective.
That's great. That's great. And so like as you go through that prototyping process, how does customer feedback play in that product development process, and how do you collect it and incorporate it?
Yeah, so right now it's a mix of ways. Like we have like if people return or exchange, we have like pretty detailed responses that they can choose from as far as why they're returning or exchanging. So we have that always collecting in the background. And then any emails or phone calls that we get from customers, we are also, cataloging that away. Like the people who don't get the right fit, and if they're willing, they'll send us like a picture. What does that look like? Because it's so valuable. Because again, like even with the two different fits, people's body shapes are so different. It's just nice. Like the more and more people who can try it, the more feedback we can get. And then we're saving all of that right now for this 2.0 version because we just want to again make it even more supportive, make it even more accommodating. And we always, in as many forms as I can say, we're like, please give us feedback because it's the only way we can get better. Like like I said, the more people who you can get trying it and telling you this is what I like, this is what I don't like, if you do another version, do this. That just makes us better. Like we're introducing a new colorway in our next production run by listening to customer feedback, and then we're actively collecting that from folks for 2.0.
That's awesome. It's exciting. I'm excited to see the new color.
Yeah.
So, pretty exciting. Are there any like emerging technologies or materials in the industry that get you really excited for future product development?
Yeah, there are so many, and I feel like that's one of the harder things to wrap my hands around, being this not like my area of expertise. So if anybody listening is like, hey, I know stuff, send them my way because, for example, so I've been following a couple of different researchers at MIT who are doing amazing things. Like one of them developed this fiber that one of their prototypes was a sports bra. And as the person moved and their body like warmed up, it became more supportive. And I'm like, that for this garment would be amazing. But then you're figuring out like, okay, how can I work with those people? Is it scalable? Can you make, thousands of them? So you're trying to figure out like, what are the right ones for right now for the next run versus what's the right thing for 3 years from now, 5 years from now. And so I'm actively talking to a handful of different people, trying to figure out what is the right approach for this one that will deliver kind of within the next 12 months. Because some of those technologies, it's just further off from when you can really incorporate them into like a scalable perspective. But those are the things like that get me really excited. And I'm just trying to put together the right team for this next version.
That's awesome. I have not heard of that fiber,
Yeah,
so you'll have to keep me updated on that.
yeah, it's
That's
super
that's
cool.
amazing. Um, and like thinking about the future, how do you see the women's undergarment industry evolving over the next like 5 to 10 years?
I feel like we're going to see more and more options for supportive and functional garments, whether it's underwear, bras, posture correcting stuff, those kinds of things. Kind of like we were seeing with period underwear, right? It's like that was like a completely new category of a garment that is functional and serves a very real need. I think we're going to see more of that in this space because again, so many people are impacted by it. External support is a great option because it's so accessible compared to internal support. Seeing PTs, like all of those kinds of things, like they can help in so many different ways. I think we're just going to see more innovation and more investment so that people have more choices.
I love that. I love that. And what would you say are some misconceptions about women's support wear that may exist like in the broader market today?
That's a great question. I think part of it is one, people don't even know that it exists. Like I think a lot of people I talk to when you say, oh, I make pelvic floor support underwear, they're like, oh, what's that? What does it help with? So that's a big thing is just one, people even knowing that a product like that exists. And then two, what does it help with? And then three, what are the things that I'm experiencing that this might, does this help me? Um, So that's a big one that we're always talking about, is just trying to tell folks, what does it do and how is it different than incontinence underwear, or how is it different than shapewear, because they're very different products that are all serving different purposes. And I think some of the misconception can be like, oh, well, I have this incontinence underwear, I don't need what you have, or oh, I've got some Spanx, or something like that. How is yours different? And they're all very different, because incontinence underwear, is absorbing of different liquids. Shapewear is, again, like contouring your body in a certain way. And then external support, like hem support wear, is, you can think of it more of like, if you sprain your ankle, you wear an ankle brace for support, and it needs that. If you have a prolapse, you need external support, is like that comparable thing. And so it's providing that counter pressure. And then in our case, it's the hammock that lifts up to support the body in a very similar way. And so that's how you can kind of think of those things differently. And some of the things you have to be careful of with fit is what I call the toothpaste tube effect, is like some garments will squeeze your sides. And this can happen if like you wear shapewear that's too small, really if you wear anything that's too small, jeans that are too small, whatever. What that will do is it puts downward pressure on your pelvic floor, which can exacerbate, if you already have symptoms, it can make it worse, or if you don't, it can just, increase that wear over time. But those are the things you want to be mindful of when you're trying these different garments, if you're looking for pelvic floor support and you're thinking of those different things.
That is so interesting. Like I didn't even think about like external pressure on the
Yeah,
sides,
it's a big one.
increasing the symptoms there. So
Yeah.
that's super helpful, super educational. How important is sustainability in your business model, and how are you addressing environmental concerns in the industry?
It's really important. I actually have a master's in sustainability, so it's something I'm like super mindful of, but I will also say it's been really challenging. Like when I met with the first studio who I met with, who I didn't end up finishing with for the design, like I told him like right away out of the gate, I was like, sustainability is so important. I only want to use fabrics that are this. I want to recycle all the materials. And they right away discouraged me from even worrying about that. They're like, it's too hard to like source the fabrics that are that, like, I don't know. It was like a pretty negative experience. And then they're like, and then the recycling is hard. Like I had all of these scraps from these first runs that I like literally had in trash bags at my house, and I searched high and low for ways that I could reuse or recycle them, and it couldn't find anything that was like reasonable. Because again, it's just something I'm super mindful of. And so that was disappointing, going through all of that. Again, I'm sure there's a learning curve there with me being new, but I definitely did my due diligence of like, how can I not throw these scraps in the trash? And came up empty-handed. It's something as I grow, I'm definitely staying top of mind. Like one of our fabrics has the OEKO Tex, certification for it. And it's something, my goal is to make all of the materials have that or a similar certification. Because I think those are really important to just make sure that stuff's being sourced responsibly, the materials in it are responsible, and that people can trust it. So it's definitely in my growth. I would say we're conscious of it and doing what we can now, but it's an area that I'll continue to be mindful of and improve in as we have more of those decisions to make, and more resources to be able to like have a bit more impact on those choices.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. Um, I guess switching gears a little bit, like as a female CEO in what is sometimes, male dominated, like what advice would you give to other women looking to start companies in traditionally underserved markets, or, in markets where there may not be a lot of women leaders?
One thing I would try to do, well, one, I would feel like if you feel like it's a good idea and it's worth doing, I would keep that confidence, because I feel like it can pretty quickly get shaken, because you're just kind of like, who am I to do this? What am I, can I really do this? Like there can be some like confidence, um, things that you come up against, especially in more male dominated spaces. And then I would also try to see, can you find other people, especially women, but also men, that have done what you're trying to do or something similar, and then see if they will provide guidance or be a sounding board. It's something I wish I would have done sooner. I stayed pretty like just me for a long time, and I feel like I could have saved a lot of time and money had I tried to seek out those resources sooner. And it's also easier said than done, right? It's like you can only send so many, cold LinkedIn DMs or attend groups and get something that's more than surface level. It's not always easy, but I would say to the extent that you can lean on the network you already have and see who they might know, and just see if you can get one or two people who can provide some guidance, that it can be truly invaluable to help you not reinvent the wheel and make some of those same mistakes, because there are a lot of support groups and resources out there. And I feel like there's more than ever for female founders. But again, it's not always easy to get into those rooms and have the meaningful connections that are more than just kind of the really quick here and there things. But I would say try as much as you can to get connected with those, because they can be very helpful.
Yeah, I've had similar experiences as well, so I completely understand where you're coming from there. What's been your approach to building company culture at him, and how do you ensure that your team understands the mission?
Um, that's a great question. Well, I mean, one, we have it written down, and we've got the vision, the mission, and the values written down, and it's something we revisit occasionally to make sure that it's still, relevant. And I think it's also just in how we live stuff day to day and how I live stuff day to day as founder and CEO. It's like I show up for them in the way I want them to show up for the people we're interacting with. So, whether that's clarity of communication, compassion, empathy, all those kinds of things. And then we talk a lot about, like, I'm the one on the team with Prolapse, so where there's a lot of education of like, what is it like for women going through this? And like, one of the things I'm most proud of is our customer service, and like how many times we get told by people like, I am shocked, by how I've been treated in this situation in a good way. I think people are so quick to assume that companies anymore, like, it's just going to be this terrible experience. And for the most part, if we can show up for people and solve that problem, and whether it's sending a replacement garment free of charge, or doing priority shipping, or being like, oh, hey, your quiz showed this, but I think really this would be the better size. Um, so many women in this space feel isolated, alone, dismissed, all those kinds of things. And to the extent that we can show up and just be supportive, whether that, like I said, is free shipping or something like that, like, we are all about it. And I feel like that's how we live those values, is just knowing who we are as a company. It's more than just a garment. We're all about education, empowerment, resources. And that's the other thing too. Like, if our garment doesn't work, we're like, hey, do you know about the other choices? Like, can we tell you, that kind of thing? Because it's, at the end of the day, it's about trying to help women feel more comfortable and confident navigating, what it is that they're navigating.
That's awesome. And that's so helpful to have that mindset of like, this doesn't work. There are
Yeah.
alternatives, and just like focusing on the customer and what's going to help them the most. So I love that. How do you stay connected to your customer base as the company grows and scales?
So far we're still, pretty small, so it's been easy to keep tabs in like our different channels of, like, what's the chatter, what's the comments, what's the feedback. But it's something as we grow, like I'm just planning for continuing to have that be top of mind. I've thought about that, because like right now Kristen responds to every email and like all those kinds of things. Um, but I think it would just be like kind of back to those values of making sure of like this as a company, how we show up for people. And we do things like regular customer interest surveys to be like, what areas of pelvic health would you like to learn more about? Because like I was saying before, we're about so much more than a garment. Like, I don't want people to have the same experience I had, where you're just completely blindsided by this and then aren't sure where to turn. And so whether it's through our expert spotlight series where we ask PT questions, or our HIM spotlight series where we ask people to share personal stories, like, we're always just trying to put out meaningful content that people can learn. It's that, like, the knowledge is power idea. And then listening to like, how is that resonating? Do you want more of that, less of that? And just trying to really keep that continuous feedback loop of, tell us something, we'll take action on it, we'll put the next thing out, and just keep it coming.
That's awesome. I love that. Um, I know that there's like different stages in life where him can really help out. Do you have, a different approach when it comes to supporting women during pregnancy, postpartum, menopause? Are you looking at like different products for those different life stages, or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it really is something I think about a lot, especially, because from the business side, everybody's like, okay, talk to one person. I'm like, but we range wide stage. right now we have, the one product, which is our external support garment. And it appeals to both people who are pregnant postpartum and then, in later stages of life. I will say when we were thinking about the brand, thinking about how we're talking to people, one of the things I noticed about some of the other brands in the space is that their language is very mom focused. And while there's nothing wrong with that, I feel like it limits to a certain life stage. So like if I'm someone in my 60s and a company is very mama, that's the language they're using, I'm not going to see myself there. And so we were very mindful in the language that we use, the imagery that we use to, I want both people to see themselves here. I want myself, in my mid 30s, I want to see myself represented. And then I want my mom and my grandma to see themselves and not feel excluded. So our colors, imagery, like all of that was very intentional to support this wider range of women. And as we think about future products, those are things I'm keeping in mind as well. So for example, right now, the garment kind of only expands so far. So if you like it and you become pregnant, it kind of only hangs in there with you till about somewhere in your second trimester. So that's something we're keeping in mind for future versions. And then that's where we're also listening to customer feedback of like, do people have different preferences on style that we can, later incorporate, making a more supportive version for the future. And also thinking of like, what are the other pelvic health needs for women as they go through these different life stages, and see how we can position ourselves to really be that trusted pelvic health brand and not just a garment brand.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I love that you have this focus on content as well as the actual product, and really making it a space, not just at the time of purchase, but also like before and afterwards. That's awesome.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
What role do you think proper support wear plays in women's confidence during physical activity and exercise?
I think it really is huge. Like if you have symptoms, from various pelvic floor disorders, if you can find support, and external support's one of those, that fits you well and that does what it should do, it's huge because like we had a woman who was postpartum who has loved the garment, and she talks about how she was able to get back to regularly going on long walks and weightlifting. And so things like that, for various reasons, like you just might not do, or you might not do as long if you don't have things like external support. Because again, imagine like you sprain your ankle and you're working on rehabbing it and you don't have your brace on, you're not going to walk as far. It's going to feel more uncomfortable, those kinds of things. But with external support, you can really help take those symptoms and not have them be top of mind, so that you can get back to doing the things that you love to do and help you feel like yourself and keep your body moving, which then, helps things not be worse and that kind of thing. So I like to talk about it as it being a really important tool in your toolkit to help manage your pelvic health.
Yeah. Have you noticed differences in what women need for support during workouts versus daily wear? And how does him address both of those?
I would say right now ours is more it's more in the daily wear category. That's one of the things, like people like it and they're like, okay, do you have one that's like even more? And so that's something I'm keeping in mind as we look at some of those different tech options for 2.0. People are using it, for the heavier duty, use cases and finding it helpful. But I would love to be able to offer multiple support options, so that if you're, doing something that's more intensive, then you could choose this one. Or if you're not having something as intensive that day, you could choose a different one. So again, that's where we're able to listen to customer feedback and think about how can we expand this line to meet women where they are.
Awesome. And thinking about like the future and innovation, if you could solve one major problem in women's wellness or comfort that doesn't exist yet, what would that be?
Oh, that's a good question. One not pelvic health related.
Maybe pelvic health related or like adjacent to that, but kind of pie in the sky if you had, one other problem that's out there.
I think it's a good question. I'm seeing a lot right now. It's kind of related, but kind of adjacent, is of course symptoms of like perimenopause and identifying those and really understanding what's going on with your body. That's a huge one. I also think even looking at like related products, pessaries are like a huge opportunity for people. If you have prolapse, pessary is an internal support device. It's medical grade silicone. You can either manage them yourself or you can have your healthcare provider help you with them depending on the style that you get and those kinds of things. And we were seeing innovation in this space, but kind of similar to other things. Like I've seen timelines of like pessary innovation, and there's just been so much time where they weren't innovated. And we are seeing new companies come out like Raya Health, REIA, and theirs is great because it has this cool design where you can like insert it yourself. It's for like more stages. But that's a space I'd love to just see similarly, even more investment in education and awareness because there's a big stigma around pessary use. I use a pessary and it was a complete game changer for me managing prolapse. Like, again, talk about just an amazing tool in your toolkit and another space where people are actively working really hard to innovate, but like others in this space, there's a lot of room for investment and innovation
Yeah.
and awareness.
Yeah, and it's kind of a trend in like women's healthcare in general. Like there hasn't been as much, investment and innovation as
Yes,
maybe in men's healthcare, right?
right.
So it'll be exciting to see how that evolves. But
Agreed.
um, how do you see the relationship between technology and intimate apparel evolving? And are there opportunities for smart fabrics or even connected products?
Yeah, definitely. So as I've been like working on assembling this team for the 2.0 version, it's cool. It's also a little overwhelming because you see like how many options there are. Like again, the wearable tech, or you can even see like what kind of pressure is like being exerted, and your garment will monitor that. Like there's amazing stuff out there. And so you're trying to figure out, and then, like I mentioned earlier, like the fabric that was being developed at MIT that is, that they prototyped as a sports bra that's more supportive as you move. Um, and 3D printing is introducing a lot of opportunity for innovation where you can test things a lot more quickly and make some pretty incredible fibers through 3D printing. So those are where I'm like, okay, experts, like come my way and let's talk about like how we can use these amazing things you're working on to innovate in this space and provide even better options for women. So I'm actively like all the time looking at what are the new technologies, who are the right companies that are putting this stuff together, and people and individuals, and trying to see one for us for 2.0 what's going to happen, but then also what's happening in this broader landscape of functional garments.
Yeah, yeah, love that. Um, what would success look like for him in, say, 5 years, and what impact do you hope to have made on women's lives?
I really want him to become like the household name like we know of, like a Spanx, where I mean what Sarah did for that type of garment, it's a new category. People love it. It can make you feel much more confident and comfortable. I want a similar impact for him because I want people to, one, be able to have something that they love to wear that helps them feel like themselves and mitigate these symptoms. And I want that education and empowerment, where the more I always say, like, I don't want my daughters to go through what I went through. I want them to be able to understand what's going on with their body, what those choices are, and that whole thing. And then support these women beyond just garments. Like, what are the other products or pain points that they're experiencing where things aren't being, innovated on, and we can invest in so that there's so much like that people are having to like cobble together, especially women, where for example, for eyeglasses, it comes with a case. Pessaries don't come with the case. Why not? It's stuff like that where it's just like that kind of stuff you see in women's space where there's just all this like mental drain that goes on with figuring these solutions out and tailoring them to us and our bodies. And I don't want that to be the case. And I want him to really be paving the way, whether it's our company and brand providing the solutions, partnering with other companies, or having a philanthropic aspect that's also putting money back into other people who are working in these spaces as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've so enjoyed chatting with you today. This has been incredible, just learning about your experience, about him, and kind of where you're making the impact in the market. So, thank you so much for the time today, and I'm excited to see where things go. So,
Same. Thanks so much, Liv.